Have a chance to hear it, study it, and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. The Dharma is vast and subtle. We now have a chance to hear it, study it, and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. The Dharma is vast and subtle. We now have a chance to hear it, study it, and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning.
I have a request. Could you sit up here, Chris, for the talk, please? We have a few people away tonight, and so our Zendo has 6-7 residents in here. Thank you all for being here. It's intimate. Bonnie, how many people on YouTube? I'm curious. Can you see? 45. Well, thank you for joining us in the Cloud Zendo YouTubers. My title tonight, for anybody that is just dropping in, is Confessions of a Zen Multitasker. And, I asked a few people if it was, if that title was any good, and I got some grins, and, people thought it was kind of a joke, but this is a serious confession. Because I am a Zen multitasker, and I don't think that's a good thing. Why are you laughing? No, just kidding. What does that mean to be a Zen multitasker? So, everything okay? Yeah. By Zen, I just mean I'm a Zen practitioner. I attempt to follow the path that we teach here, which is very much about uni-tasking, not multitasking. Do one thing at a time, do it mindfully, do it carefully, not necessarily slowly. Sometimes we do things fast and mindfully, which you could say is carefully, and just generally upholding our awareness and attention and care of things rather than productivity, how much we can get done, and so forth. And so as a Zen priest, as a member of this community, I feel very supported in those practices to do that. And I'm also the director of Upaya on the administrative side, and we have thousands of people that join our online programs. Many of you are here. And there's always, with any administrative job, there are many things going on all the time, as Senko knows, being a consultant for such people, and in his past life. I wonder how much you told people to uni-task rather than multitask. Yeah, it's actually good. It's better, which we'll get into. And so I just find myself, and also I'm just prone to that. I think it's my natural inclination is to kind of multitask. It's like a kind of greed. Bhavana tanha, if you know Pali, it's this craving for existence. Like I want to live. I want to kind of experience. Why do one thing when you can do 5 at the same time? So there's a part of me that's kind of inclined to that, and it's a kind of addiction. I think it really is. It's I think there are definitely neurochemical addictions going on there, and you could talk about. I don't know much about neuroscience, so I don't know if this is truly accurate to say. But when you read the stuff, it's like when you have a novel stimulus, you get a dopamine hit or an adrenaline rush when you're kind of paying attention to multiple things, and this makes you a little high. It makes you upregulated in that sense, and we can get attached to that. And so why not do that? What's wrong with that? And there are 2 perspectives. I mean, there's a perspective from Zen, which I'll get into, and then there's a perspective from just the normal business world, where it's like, well, multitasking seems like you can get more done, right? It's more efficient, it's more productive. And yet, from the research, it seems it's just not the case. It's actually not true. We're fooling ourselves into thinking that we're doing more and we're doing better. So just a little bit of some of the things I found online, a little bit of research. This was a very useful article by Susan Weinschenk in Psychology Today. She says, does this describe you? While you are on the teleconference call on Zoom, you're writing your quarterly report, checking your email, texting your friend about where you're meeting for lunch. And you would say that you're probably good at multitasking. You can do that, right? Well, she says estimates that are that you can lose up to 40% of your productivity in multitasking. 40%, and that's just a kind of a baseline. It's in all of the little time that's lost when you switch from one thing to another. That doesn't even account for the, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does. I don't know how they get this 40% number, but it's written about a lot when you're looking at multitasking stuff. So, but the quality, the time, it's like the task switching. And that's where she says the term multitasking is actually a misnomer. People can't actually do more than one task at a time. Instead, we switch tasks. So the term that is used in research is task switching. And, sometimes we fall into this if we think we know what's coming, right? So maybe you're sitting there, and thank you for all of you for not having devices in front of you, but perhaps if your devices are in front of you and you're like, oh, I know about task switching, let me check Twitter. What's going on in, anywhere in the world, or let me check my text messages, or my, all of the things that we have that we can just check, that we can just look at our messages because we've heard that before, right? And then what do you miss? And maybe it is something exactly that you've heard before. Maybe you don't actually miss anything. And this is, I think, the trick, and where I've certainly fooled myself, is if I'm hearing something and I kind of, especially like say I'm talking to you and you're telling me a story that I've heard before, I start, even if I'm not doing it physically, I'll start multitasking in my mind. I'll start thinking about something else. And the brain is so good at picking out novel things that, I can be kind of monitoring a Zoom call or talk and completely doing something else, writing an email, very cognitive, takes pretty full attention to do. But then if my name is said, boom, I'm there, right? So it gives this illusion that, oh, I can do both. Except that I really hear any of what was said besides my name being called? Not really. I might not even be able to tell you what the basic topic was, but it was like enough, right? And so I think we can kind of get away with it. At least I do. I get away with multitasking, and not just get away. I mean, I'm praised for it in a way. Like people might say like, oh, you can do so many things, and you can kind of have your finger on all the things at the same time, and that like makes me feel good, right? Like, oh, I can do so much. I'm so productive. And then I get home and I'm like, oh. And Roshi often says, oh, you're like a one-armed paper hanger, which is a strange image of someone that has one arm who's hanging wallpaper. And so you have to like put it up on the wall and then smooth it out, and it's like this. It's kind of a terrible image, but and that's the feeling, though. It's like you have to be very fast and very kind of getting it right, and maybe you can do it, but what's the cost? What's the cost to you? What's the cost to the thing that you're trying to give attention to, the people that you're with, that you might be multitasking with? So she goes on, for many years, the psychology research has shown that people can only attend to one cognitive task at a time. So this is the task switching. You're not really multitasking. You can only be conducting one mental activity at a time. So you can be talking or you can be reading. You can be reading or you can be typing. You can be listening or you can be reading, one thing at a time. So it comes down to like this, it's like, what is your mind doing, the cognitive mind, the analytical, what's the word, the dialogical mind, what's it doing? It only is going to do one thing, and it can switch back and forth quickly. But if you've ever noticed, if you're talking to someone and they start, writing an email, or they start doing something on their phone, they're gone, and they might be like, what? But when they're gone. And we kind of allow ourselves that because we know we're just so bombarded by texts and emails and stuff, and we're talking to someone, like, bzz, bzz, yeah, what was it? What did you? Yeah, okay. And you kind of pretend to know what they said, and you don't want to act like you didn't get it, but you missed it. You missed the moment, So we can only do one thing at a time. But what about like things that don't take cognitions, like walking and talking? So that seems like, okay, well, yes, we can walk and we can talk on the phone. We can walk and we can even write a text, although then, you're kind of staring at your phone. But actually, you're a lot worse at walking when you're talking on the phone, or definitely when you're texting. Like a lot more, the research shows a lot more accidents happen. You walk into traffic. There's the famous YouTube video of the woman just walking in a mall straight into the fountain. You see that? And then she gets on an interview with a newscaster, and she's like, "It's so dangerous to text and walk. Like, people should not do that. We should have a law." I was so embarrassed, and it's like, oh, and it's true. It's like, it's dangerous. Not even to mention texting and driving, which apparently is 6 times more dangerous than drinking and driving. 6 times. Thousands of people die every year from accidents due to somebody looking at their phone when they're on the road. So it's not really an exception. To a certain extent, we can do these things, but just know that you're really only paying attention to one thing at a time. And then the next question is, what are the costs of that? Why do we do that? So if multitasking is so bad for us, if it's dangerous, if it's detrimental, if we're 40% less productive, why would we even do that? It's dumb, right? Well, we're addicted. We're both addicted, and we are conditioned from within and from without to engage in this type of behavior. And if you think about it, for one thing, our minds are, I think, naturally conditioned to give attention to novel stimuli, right? It's like how we survived as early mammals, perhaps, or whatever our ancestors were, or deep, deep ancestors in the wilds, when you're kind of foraging berries, or you're, I don't know what they did, just doing something, and there's just a little bit of like a movement in the bushes. And those ancestors of ours who noticed the novel stimulus and did something and ran, survived. And those that were like very zen and absorbed and just picking the berries and just tasting the berries, they're gone. That line died out to a certain extent. And John Donne tells the story of this is the philosopher mouse, that if you start thinking, why do we think that something is real? instead of just knowing, oh, that's an image of a tiger, not an actual gone. And so we're biologically conditioned in this way to reify things that are out there, make them real, and to be attracted by novel stimuli. So that's just what we're born with. And then in our modern culture, I mean, society, I think, has probably always given us novel stimulation because we crave it, we seek it. But with technology, it's just become so much more pervasive. And so you can have a situation where you're standing there in front of your computer and you've got 3 screens and you've got the talk you're working on and you've got your calendar and then you've got your text and you've got your email. And this is the trick. You've got it so that the text and the email will do something when something comes in. So if text comes in, you can see it comes in. You know, I get a buzz on my hand. I'll notice the text. The email will suddenly pop up and it's a nice light color instead of the dark color of all the ones I've already read. So it's like bing, bing. And then I'm not so into social media, but if you've got your Facebook and your Twitter and your TikTok and your Instagram, and I don't know what else you could have on your screen that's causing these constant notifications, you know, notifying. I mean, it's really exciting out there. It's exciting being at the office these days, you know, it's like never a dull moment. And Slack, and I don't know what all the other things that, you know, thank goodness I'm not into them, otherwise I'd be gone. I'm into enough notifying things as it is. And so this constant stimulation is, I think, addictive. I think we get jazzed on this constant thing. And this is a confession because it's like, I'm not supposed to be like that here. You know, I'm not supposed to be bringing that energy to a Zen center. And when I was considering this talk, you know, I felt simultaneously the gratitude for you who are here doing this uni-tasking practice. I mean, what an incredible thing to do with your life, to just let go of all of that to whatever extent you can. I mean, you all probably have phones and are getting notifications too, but not now, not during Zazen, hopefully not during Samu. You know, it's like you're dedicating yourself to something else, going against the stream, from the stream of modernity, which is just constant barrage of notifications of instant messages and whatnot. So I feel just so grateful that you're here doing this, committed to this, that we have a place. So grateful to Roshi John and all the people, you know, the benefactors that chart symbolizes there. It has some names on it, but so many more names, thousands of names, thousands of people who have helped create the space and continue to allow it to exist, so that we can do something very counterproductive. You know, in a way, it's not productive at all. And we can say, oh, well, it's, you know, it helps with productivity and it can help you do things. Yes, it's true. Like there's some, you know, mundane benefit, you could say, as well as, but when it really comes down to it, we're doing nothing but wasting time, sitting here for 3 hours a day, doing nothing. You're wasting your time. Of course, anything else you're doing might be wasting your time too. So maybe you're not wasting your time. Anyway, so feeling the gratitude of that, that there is this way of life, and then feeling a kind of guilt, a kind of responsibility of like, one, I mean, the multitasking is probably not good for me, not good for my brain, you know, and it's probably definitely not good to bring that to the community to whatever extent it does. You know, I try to keep it in the office, but I'm sure it leaks, right? You all know me. You're not surprised by what I'm saying. So I'm sorry. And I'm going to do better. And I have some ideas. So what are some things we can do about this problem, you know, that we have? What are some things I can do? So one thing is is the practice of uni-tasking, which in a way is what we do at a Zen Center. Everything we do is a kind of uni-tasking. It's like doing one thing at a time, doing it carefully. And why do it one at a time? Because then you can really focus your mind on it. You can have a full awareness and attention of what you're doing. We even, when we pick something up, we use two hands, right? But you could say, oh, that's a Japanese custom. And it's also a way to not be like this, right? I can do this and do this and do this. And if I had 5 hands, I would be using them like Avalokiteshvara, right? Except then how much are you with what's in one hand versus another? So for us here at the Zen Center, of course, this is our lifestyle. This is what we're committed to doing, is a uni-tasking way of life. And I never thought about it before that way, but of course, I kind of knew that's sort of the point, but it never really clicked for me until I was thinking about this, that it's the difference between multitasking and uni-tasking. That's why we do things the way we do. To not be distracted and bifurcated and split into so many directions, which most of the things in the world are pulling us to do. They want us to be distracted and stimulated, because that's how, in a way, that's how that you can be influenced. You can be influenced to buy, to consume. You can be influenced when you're just distracted and off guard. You're like on YouTube and all this, things automatically play, and you've got the list of videos right there, and it's like this free association, and then there's an ad, and you want to get to the next thing, so you watch the ad, and you're like in that kind of heightened state, and it only lasts 20 seconds or however long, or you can skip it if you have that ability, and that's, it's like our whole kind of consumeristic culture is built on this, of relying on that ability to distract us and pull us off our attention. And so what are we doing here is the opposite of that. Just, there's a great blog, Zen Habits, which I don't read much, but I found one interesting article on multitasking there. And there's step number 7 here, or thing number 7, which is really, I think, a key to this. If you have a problem with multitasking, like I do, number 7 is, if you feel the urge to check your email or switch to another task, stop yourself. Breathe deeply, refocus, get back to the task at hand. And when I read that, it was like, wow, because that's what happens. You're in a task, even if there aren't notifications. And this is the scary part, right? This is actually quite frightening. You're doing something that you want to be focused on, and you have a thought like, oh, I need to check my email, or oh, I should check the fire that's happening. I bet it's gotten worse. Or I should check the news. Maybe some news has broke. It doesn't really make sense. Maybe the fire thing makes sense. But like, do you need to check the news? Do you need to check your Twitter feed or your Facebook? No, of course not. Why is it that the mind does that? It's so bizarre. Like, you're doing something. You're like, you could be in the middle of a paragraph of reading something you want to read, or in the middle of an email, and you're suddenly pulled away. And you might not even notice it if you're just in the normal run of life. When do you notice it? When you're sitting, right? Then you really notice. You're just sitting there, you're just watching your breath, and boom, you're gone. How does that happen? It's so bizarre. Out of nowhere, we're just distracted, we're pulled away. And so that's the first thing we do when we sit Zazen, right? And so therefore, I think it also seems like a very practical way of dealing with the distractions that arise in our lives. And I'm speaking to the choir, but bear with me. This is instructions to myself. Like, you need to stop being distracted, Kigaku. Just when you notice that urge, you bring it back. It's the same thing, I think, if you're probably quitting anything or trying to quit cigarettes. You notice the urge, just come back, right? I'm not going to do it yet. Maybe I'll have one later. I'll have one distraction later. I'll look at Twitter at 8 o'clock. I'll come back to it. And that can be useful, right? For anything you're addicted to. It's not just like cold turkey. I'm never going to shut off my Twitter, shut off my Facebook, cancel everything. Some people do that. I don't know if it's useful, but it sounds unsustainable. Just like if I'm not going to eat for a week, I need to lose weight. So what's the sustainable way? Like how can you create a way of life that's conducive to attention, awareness, and presence? And I think that's part of what we're doing here. And there's also things you can do that are really interesting that I won't go into too much, but like Pomodoro techniques, I think you know about Pomodoro, where you have like blocks of very focused time, like 20 minutes, okay, go do this, do not be distracted. And you have a little timer. And then as soon as you're done with the 20 minutes, like, okay, now take a break, go walk outside, take 5 minutes, then you come back, okay, really focused. And so those kinds of things might be helpful in doing that. And in a way, we do that in Zazen. It's kind of our Pomodoros of Zazen, okay, 25 minutes. Okay, now walk slowly, walk fast. Okay, back 25 minutes, Sesshin is just like a bunch of sitting Pomodoros. Yeah. And just to go back to this, it's so interesting, like, why do we do it? Why do we keep perpetuating the cycle of distraction when part of us really knows? And I think that's the thing, maybe part of us knows and part of us ignores it, just ignores the detrimental effects. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I don't know what it's like out there in the corporate world. I mean, it must be way more hectic than, my office multitasking. People are probably watching this going, man, you have no idea. You have no idea. And I hear that, and I know I don't have any idea. And I just wonder, like, that kind of high-paced, fast-paced life where you're kind of doing and multitasking, and then you come back home, and then are you tired, or what's this would be what I would ask someone if they were like, how do I know if multitasking is detrimental? Well, how do you feel at the end of the workday? What do you do? Do you feel like you have to have a drink? You have to have a smoke? You have to have something that just numbs the pain because you're just like exhausted and tired and stressed, and you're just like, oh, TV, just turn on the TV, give me a drink, I'm just done. That's not how I want to live, The promise of uni-tasking, even in the kind of corporate literature, is like, you can have a day of productive, stable, consistent, task-oriented behavior, and then you end your day feeling refreshed and light, and you want to go work out, and you want to go read, and you want to practice the piano, and you want to do all the things that your kind of early morning self says you want to do in the afternoon, and then by the end you're tired. You're too tired. Maybe multitasking has something to do with it. There's probably a lot more to it, the stresses of life. But I kind of want to see, if I really commit to uni-tasking, do I feel less exhausted at the end of the day? Having more energy to engage with those kind of, things like practicing an instrument, reading a book, those kinds of things, spending time with the family. Yeah. And here, and I think for us, we really know this, but just to say this to remind ourselves, the Zazen is of utmost importance. Why is that? What is it about that thing that we do? It's a kind of like the paramount uni-tasking. You're really just doing one thing. You're just sitting, you're just being, you're just watching your breath. Oh yeah, and that's another thing about uni-tasking, the just means uni, right? So when we say just sweep, just eat, just wash your bowl, just sit. That's why we say that so much, I think, is because that's uni-tasking. And so when we sit, we really find out, I think, what we're doing with our minds the rest of the time. You really get to see how, because your habits are have so much momentum, so much inertia. And if you spent, the previous 15 hours of your day in this multitasking kind of blitz, or if you're just, in whatever multi-stimulation world you're in, and then you sit down to meditate, and you're like, why can't I calm my mind? It's like, really? Or even if you're sitting like 3 times a day, and then in between you go and do whatever it is, and you're kind of like this. I mean, no wonder our minds are like that. I was just thinking this morning, my mind is basically YouTube. I've, nothing against YouTube. Thank you, YouTube, for making this available. But you're watching YouTube. You've got like, after this is over, I guess, I don't remember, is it now that there's all the other videos, or when it's over, there's all the other videos? I think it's, that you can watch next. And if you don't press stop, it'll automatically play the next thing, right? And so you're just sitting there watching the video of your mind and your breath, and then all of a sudden another video starts playing, and then another thing. And you don't have any control. You can stop it, but it happens automatically, and that's the thing. And I guess on YouTube you can turn off the automatic thing, but you have to actually press the switch. So when we sit to do Zazen, that's that intention we talk about when we first sit down. Right? That's part of it. Set your intention. Why are you really here? I'm here to be of benefit to all beings, and I'm turning off the autoplay switch. I will not allow the thought to just continue one after another without catching it. I really intend to just come back to this channel and just be here now. And I think what else could be more useful? That is like directly practicing the non-multitasking skill. Just keep coming back to one thing. But is that what Zazen's really about? Just making us good at doing one thing? I mean, I think it is, in one sense. There's always the relative and the absolute. And in one sense, Zazen is the premier uni-task, and kind of the cornerstone of our practice here at uni-tasking. On the other hand, it's also, you could call it zero-tasking, right? If you're really just sitting, and maybe this can come, only after you've spent some time in meditation and grown to appreciate it and really feel the benefits of the calmness of the uni-tasking. I think it would be hard to imagine or practice in a zero-tasking way if all you're doing is struggling against your racing mind and your thoughts, and you're just pulled about like, what's the image in the Pali Suttas, like a rampaging elephant, and you're just without any semblance of control. And so if that's your mind, then watch the breath, come back to the body, calm, come back. Really, you're doing it. You are practicing. You're doing a task. Come back. And if at this stage you've read something like, oh, there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do, there's no meditation, I'm just going to sit here and allow whatever to be, even if that means my mind is wandering the whole time, then I think that's not meditation. It's probably not good either. You're just sitting there and your mind's just wandering, and you're just like, well, isn't that Zen? Just allow things to be. I think our teachers would say, nope, come back. You really need to put a little bit of effort, and intention into staying with. So then you can accustom yourself to being in that flow of one thing, of one task. And I think that's probably why we do everything else like this. It's not just that meditation helps us do things one at a time, but everything we do helps us meditate. It's a mutually, it's a feedback loop, a mutually reinforcing feedback loop of uni-tasking. And I would think that once you've kind of learned the things you're doing, whether it's just sweeping or just cooking or just doing the Dharma podcast or whatever it is, that's your samu. And you can kind of be in that flow, and you realize it's only taken me 10 years to realize how detrimental the multitasking is to actually your time on the cushion. And then you start to appreciate the simplicity of uni-tasking. It's no longer boring. It's no longer like non-stimulating. Like I need to go, I've been doing boring stuff all day. Now I got to go back to my room and play a video game because I feel so dull, or I feel so kind of dry. Maybe you go through that phase, and maybe that's part of the process. But I would hope that at a certain point you then realize for yourself the sweetness of the simplicity of our lifestyle here. And then you realize the just total pleasure, or the joy, the ease and joy of sitting meditation without needing to do anything else. And that you're fully supported by this community, by the benefactors, by the teachers, by everyone, to just do this. And then I think there's the possibility for zero tasking arises. And zero tasking is just another word for just sitting. Shikantaza. Shikantaza. So sometimes Roshi will say, people come in and you say, what's your practice? Shikantaza. Oh, okay. Like really? Like what are you doing? What are you actually doing? And usually people have a practice. I'm breathing, I'm mindful of breathing, I'm aware of my body, I'm aware of thoughts arising, I'm intending to do something. So shikantaza in a way is not really a practice. You can't really come in and say, my practice is shikantaza. You can say, my practice is sitting with my body, with my breath, and intending not to wander. Now, shikantaza might occur though. It might happen as you drop into that sense of appreciation for just this, and then letting go of any vestige of doing at all. If that happens, it kind of has to happen by itself. It's not something you can actually do, right? If that happens, then lo and behold, you're not doing anything, and yet you're not distracted. And that's the key. Non-meditation, non-distraction. That's kind of the definition of shikantaza. So in the Shikantaza Reader, which is this amazing document that I hadn't really realized how in depth it goes into so many things. It's just available online on upaya.org. You can Google it. The Shikantaza Reader. Roshi starts it with a brief introduction. She writes, Shikantaza, or just sitting, is the most direct of practices in all of Buddhism. It is the method of no method, and invites us to just sit in stillness and openness, perceiving things simply and directly as they are, without engaging in thought, including thoughts of motivation. An approach that requires no mediation of technique. Shikantaza is a fully embodied and wholehearted practice that is direct, intimate, and uncontrived. Great teachers have expounded, she continues, great teachers have expounded richly on Shikantaza, but in the end and in the beginning, it is really up to you and me to just sit. The words, both written and thought, have to drop away sooner or later. And so that, what you can discover there, and I can't believe there's only 5 minutes left already. There's so many more pages to go. What do we find there? What's the point of this completely useless activity? And just to really make that point, Norman Fisher Roshi says, Zazen is fundamentally a useless and pointless activity. A person devoted to Zazen is devoted to Zazen not because it helps anything or is peaceful or interesting, but simply because one is devoted to it. You can't argue for it or justify it or make it into something good. You just do it because you do it. It's not even a question of wanting to. And so it's like, at first we do Zazen because there's some benefit. Why else would we do it? We do Zazen because it helps us, uni-task, it helps us in our life. But when we approach this notion of zero tasking, we have to even let that go and realize that we really are just doing nothing. And that there's actually something to that. It's not even a benefit, but it's like, it's a realization, it's to know what you really are, to be what you really are. There's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go. Everything's just as it is. There's a sense of all rightness, and he talks about this. If we don't appreciate its fundamental uselessness, which comes from the fundamental all rightness of our life, we will turn it into something acquisitive and busy, just like everything else we do. So how not to make Zazen acquisitive, something to get something from, right? And so he says it right there. He's showing us, if life is all right, if everything is perfect as it is, to put it a little bit more strongly, but even then, it could use a little improvement, all right? But everything needs improvement. Everything's a problem that we're trying to fix. That's the mind that needs to multitask, that needs to become efficient and optimize the time, is because there are problems that need to be solved, and there's too many problems, and there's never an end to problems. That's the thing. And so if your happiness, if your contentment is based on the solution of problems, you'll never be happy. But if it's based on the fundamental all rightness of life, knowing that you're going to get up and you're going to solve some problems, but not because that's what you need to do to be happy. You have a basis in the perfection of things. Then you could say, that's the purpose of familiarizing yourself with that which is already here. You don't need to do anything to get it, right? They keep telling us that. These texts keep saying this. You already have everything you need. You already are a Buddha. You already are enlightened. Just wake up. And then it's like, well, wait a minute. Then why do I suffer so much? Well, because we're pulled away. We're distracted. That's the stream of samsara. So maybe I'll close with Hongzhi, the practice of true reality. The practice of true reality is simply to sit serenely in silent introspection. When you have fathomed this, you cannot be turned around by external causes and conditions. This empty, wide open mind is subtly and correctly illuminating, spacious and content, without confusion from inner thoughts of grasping, effectively overcome habitual behavior and realize the self that is not possessed by emotions. So that's both a description of our practice of sitting and the kind of the results, the end of suffering. Oh, I just have to read one more thing, which is, this is, most of this is like, oh, it's Zen, and it's very kind of this way. And you see from this section, which is often read, about the instructions to Bahiya, the Buddha's instructions to Bahiya from the Pali Sutta. Oh, I just have to say a little bit about this because I've heard this sutta many times, but I hadn't read the beginning part of it, and this is really interesting. So Bahiya is this kind of famous yogi, and he's called the bark clad. So he was an ascetic, and he had lots of followers, and he did teachings. But one day when he was by himself, he thought to himself, have I really woken up? Am I awake? Am I enlightened? And a deva appeared to him, a being from another kind of realm, not a human. A deva appeared and said, "Nope, you haven't actually realized it yet." And he's like, "Oh, I was worried about that. What do I do? Who has in all the world? Who has achieved this?" And she said, "Well, there is the rightly awakened one, the Buddha, the Tathagata. He's 220 miles that way. You can see him tonight." So he takes off and somehow gets there within a day. He must have had some spiritual powers. And the Buddha has begun his alms round. So he's in the town, he's begging for food. And the Buddha wasn't a multitasker. So Bahiya says, "Please give me the teachings. I'm here, I came from far away. You're the rightly awakened one. I really need to know." And Buddha says, I'm begging for food now, like later, And he's like, no, I could die, you could die. Who knows what's going to happen? Anything could happen. Please tell me the liberative word right now. Buddha's like, Bahia, please, can I get some food? I need to go, And Bahia says one more time, he says the third time, Buddha, please. And he didn't say, I have a bad feeling about this, but he could have said, I have a bad feeling about this. If you don't tell me now, just please tell me, give me something. So he says, okay, Bahia, in the seen, there is only the seen. In the heard, there is only the heard. In the sensed, there is only the sensed. In the cognized, there is only the cognized. Thus you should see that indeed there is no thing here. This Bahia is how you should train yourself. And since Bahia, there is for you in the seen only the seen, in the heard only the heard, in the sensed only the sensed, and in the cognized only the cognized, and you see that there is no thing here, you will therefore see that there is also no thing there. You'll see that you are therefore located neither in the world of this, nor in the world of that, nor in any place between the two. And this alone is the end of suffering. And Bahia got it. He got it. And later that day, I believe, he was killed. And the Buddha said to his assembly, they said, oh, he had trampled by an elephant. He said, oh, that guy that you were talking to, he got trampled by an elephant. And the Buddha said, please go make a funeral fire and a memorial for him. And they did this, and they said, so who is this person that you did, this beautiful memorial for? And he said, that was an awakened one. And so he got it. So let's let the seen be just the seen, and the heard be just the heard, and this task be just this task. And thank you for hearing my confession. And I hope that in speaking this publicly, it will help me be a better uni-tasker, a better Zen practitioner, a better friend and father and husband and student, so that I can be fully with whatever I'm with. And that's my commitment to you all. Thank you.